Thanks, Toya. I appreciate that. I kind of feel like I should give Zach a chance to respond to that and describe how much fun he's had the last couple of years.
Yeah, you thought the state audits were tough, 2 years. We appreciated the OIG's time and effort in working with their evaluators, their inspectors, especially when they were dealing with a mode that they weren't normally comfortable with pipeline, the overview of that. And certainly we had a lot of conversation. Hopefully we didn't have too much conflict about the issues. And I think that we're probably in a better place because of it. Certainly it's no fun when you're responsible to be sitting in the chair and have people continuously, well, why do you do that? And why did you do that? And why shouldn't you have done that? And especially when you're trying to do a lot of other things and respond to that. But it helped us, I believe, in the long run to have a better program in place than what we have. I think it helps our state partners. We have implemented all those recommendations and addressed those. It's like I said, it's about safety and trying to be better. And to that end, we tried to pull, all the good, from the oversight that we get from our evaluators to try to improve the program. So, that's what we've done with that, and I think we've done it effectively. I think that we collaborated with the states in addressing a lot of these issues because these issues come forward from looking at state programs and issues that the OIG had with state programs and our oversight to actually identify and find those issues. So I believe that we're doing a better job of that today than what we maybe did in the past. I think, I felt, good that after 2 years of, us backing the truck up and dumping everything we did to them, there was, just 7 things that came out of that. I was expecting more, and the grant review issues that we had, I appreciated them recognizing that, we had effective program in place. Our guys are experienced, and they looked in depth and they identified issues and they did everything right, but it's one of those things that our operator friends in the audience can appreciate. Unless you document and you have those procedures in place, you're not sure that you're going to get consistency from auditor to auditor and year to year. Some of those more experienced people step out and do other things. So it was good to bring our focus to that so we could prioritize that and make some time and get to some of those things we probably were thinking about getting to anyway. So I appreciate that for all that. So I would, any questions?
We have plenty of time for questions, so yeah, thanks, Beth.
Thanks. I'm Jeff Insko from Michigan. I'm also on the board of the trust. Thanks, Toya, especially for your presentation, because Alan and Zach were painting such a rosy picture of collaboration and partnership. It was making me uncomfortable. So in the interest of embracing conflict, even the best partnerships inevitably have conflict. So I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit more specifically about some of the potential sources of conflict that you see as having been problems in the past or perhaps problems moving forward. That's, I suppose, more for Alan and Zach than it is for Toya.
Well, I think one of the challenges that states face is the staffing and trying to keep those experienced people in hand. We're always pushing them to hire more, to try to retain that experience base, to get them trained as quickly as possible. And from that, we hear a lot of frustration that, look, you guys are holding us accountable for something that we really don't have that full control over. That's that legislative pitch I made earlier. It does go to the state legislation to support the states in getting those inspector salaries to where you can do the retention, to where you can hire additional experienced staff and can retain that. And the training piece, I think, is probably, we have 5 regional meetings that PHMSA participates with states, the National Association of Pipeline Safety Representatives, where each region we go to and we hear feedback. And one of the things that continually comes back to us is training. You know, we need methods to get our guys in quicker and faster and so that we can get them up and running. So we're trying to meet that challenge. You know, we're also onboarding 109 inspectors too, and they need training also. We've got a wonderful training facility there in Oklahoma City. We have a new director who has distance learning background and capability, and I think that we will meet that challenge, but it will certainly be a challenge for us.
Yeah, I think from the state perspective, I think Zach has referenced one of the major elements that historically we had frustration in, especially as the complexity of programs increased over time, was having the resources available. I know as you talk to our counterparts around the country, sometimes simply getting to Oklahoma City is a challenge. And I think as we're looking forward to that is looking at, you know, better and alternative methods of providing that training, be it distance, and I know that web-based training is become more available, but I think that resource allocation and getting that partnership is crucial to really continuous process improvement. Is you know, I was pipeline safety director for the state of Washington from 2003 to 2007, and just came back recently to the state of Washington, and the program has changed dramatically. Just the types and types of regulations that we're administering has grown dramatically. The other element that, you know, I know NAPSR had challenges with in the past was simply the funding model, and that has improved greatly over time. You know, could we look for more? You know, it'd be great, but I think that those are elements that are always going to be a challenge resource-wise.
So I'm going to take moderator's prerogative here and ask a sort of follow-up question on the staffing issues. Trying to find a silver lining in the current downturn in employment in the industry, is that providing you guys any buffer against either further losses or providing some applicants for your vacancies?
Certainly, I think that we're seeing candidates that you know, are well qualified, that because of that downturn that would have remained employed in the industry if they were still there. But a lot of that is we're pulling from an exploration side of that industry as opposed to a transmission pipeline side of that industry, and they're really two different things. So, you know, I came originally from the exploration side to the transportation side, and you know, those skill sets are certainly there, and we can benefit from them, and porting them over is something that we certainly can do and do efficiently. And I think that it's a great opportunity for us now to have the opportunity to staff up and hire because of that situation. And I'm sure some of the states will be having some of those same opportunities.
I had a quick question. My name is Connie Jackson. I'm the city manager in San Bruno, California. My question is for Ms. Aldridge. Really appreciated your presentation. I actually have two questions. The first is whether there's any follow-on action planned or proposed to check back in with PHMSA on the what I think are terrific recommendations that your audit revealed. And then the second is whether your office has any authority to reach down directly to the state level. As you know, there's a series of very vexing issues with the California Public Utilities Commission that have consumed a very significant focus of attention on the part of the city of San Bruno and others over the past 5 years, and which have as yet not been corrected.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your questions. To your first question regarding follow-up, because we consider all of PHMSA's, they've taken all the actions to close our recommendations, we obviously need to give them time to implement. Another issue that impacts our ability to just sort of decide to go back in at a certain period and follow up is we've got other requests and other priorities within the OIG. Specifically, we received a request earlier this year from Representative DeFazio to take a look at PHMSA's implementation of recommendations and mandates. So we don't really have a lot of flexibility to look at things that we'd like to look at. But I would assume at some time in the future, particularly if there's another a series of incidents that again call into question PHMSA's oversight, I would assume that we would be asked to go in and look at this issue again. With regard to authority over states, we really don't. The only way that we would be able to venture into that is to the extent that the states are, obviously they receive 80% funding for their programs, but our issues would be directed at PHMSA's oversight. Our issues would be pointed to PHMSA. Yeah, I think that would be the answer to your question.
Rick Kuprowitz. I usually represent the public. Appreciate your comments this morning. Alan, it sounds like the WTC is in good hands. I don't want to jinx you here, but we want to talk about conflict. What's kind of driving this issue? It's called money. And most of the states do not have their own pipeline safety agency. After the terrible tragedy at Bellingham, I think Alan may have commented on it here, but the WTC did have a core group of pipeline safety experts that they could build from. And so the involvement going to interstate agency status for the state of Washington kind of happened in a heartbeat. When you got your senators and legislature behind you, it's amazing how everybody's going to start cooperating. But in fairness to all the parties here, many states don't have that infrastructure. And so to just go there and say, states take over the liquid pipelines or the gas transmission pipelines is an injustice to the states. I was wondering if, Alan, you could comment very quickly or briefly. Washington State has a rather unique funding mechanism for pipeline safety, I believe, in the state of Washington that might be differential. Because when I hear the state of California, the state fire marshal, who's been around for over 30 years as its agency, say, well, we don't have the resources and we got to give this up, give up our 30 years of experience in interstate. 9% of being smart is knowing when you're heading for trouble. They were clearly underfunded among other agencies in that state. But could you comment on Washington State briefly?
Certainly, Rick. As reaction to the Bellingham tragedy in 1999, the first thing that happened was a modification to our pipeline safety statute and putting some very direction in it. One was to seek interstate agency status. It was followed by another piece of legislation which, relative to the funding of the pipeline safety program in the state of Washington, we were, the legislation really directed the Washington State Utilities Transportation Commission to develop regulations, rules, to provide for a system to collect funding from both our intra and interstate operators to fund that portion necessary to have a reasonable and good pipeline safety program over and above that funding that is provided by PHMSA, by the feds. We in the state of Washington actually, we have a process whereby if you take our total operating budget and you subtract away what is given to us by the feds, we then basically apportion the cost to all our operators based on a proration. It's a 2-year running average, a proration of the effort that we put against each operator. So there is kind of a regulatory incentive in the process that if you see less of us, you probably pay less in fees on a proportional basis. But everyone gets visited by us in our inspection process, and again, we charge those fees on a prorated basis based on the effort that we apply to the individual operators, both intra and interstate operators.
Next. I think Linda was up first.
Hi, Linda Farrell, Pipeline Safety Coalition. Ms. Aldridge, I was wondering if you could tell us which of the 48 states you investigated, 5, which states were in those 5, and how did you determine which of the 48 states to use as your test sample?
Well, what we do when we select states or programs or agencies to look at, we do a random sample so that there's no there's no question that we picked on certain states. The 5 states that we included in our review were California, Oklahoma, Georgia, Florida, and Texas.
And Carol?
I'm Carol Foss from New Hampshire. I'm under the impression, rightly or wrongly, that unless a state has an interagency agreement, the state safety folks don't really have access to any information about the safety status of a pipeline. And I'm just curious, A, if that's true. In our state, we have status for natural gas, but not, or at least not until recently, if at all, for hazardous liquid. And I'm just wondering if there's a potential for information sharing short of actual inspection authority.
Certainly. Our regions that inspect the interstate pipelines, if there was a state partner that was curious about, I think anything that was going on with that pipeline operator, that we would be open to that phone call and open to that conversation about that. The interstate agent, I shouldn't say interstate agents, the interstate pipelines that where there's not an interstate agent involved, the federal inspectors inspect that pipeline solely. We inspect it. We do the enforcement authority of that. So if you're a state program where that's the situation that goes on, certainly we post information on enforcement so the results of those inspections are on our public website, not only for state inspectors to see, but also for the public to see. So we do share information, and you heard Jeff mention the INPEX program that we're looking for support for so that we can share more information between the states and the feds, because it is, I like the fact that we sound like we're very collaborative, almost to the point that it scares you, because we should be one. We're all about safety. We're all about trying to, keep our families and your families safe that live by in pipelines. So to that degree, yes, we'd like to share more information. It sounds like it's so easy to do. And trust me, we've thought about this and have been working towards sharing more information for some time. But it is a little more complex than it appears, on the surface to get everybody. It's, calling it all the same thing, getting the IT structure in place and the changes with that and the security and all those things together to do that. But we're certainly about that. We're certainly moving that direction. Does that help you?
Anybody else?